The parting of the Red Sea is one of the most dramatic events in the Bible. It's a story of faith, divine intervention, and freedom. But did it actually happen? For centuries, scholars, historians, and scientists have debated whether this event was a literal miracle, a natural occurrence, a legendary story with symbolic meaning. In this video, we'll analyze three major perspectives. 1. The biblical account. 2. Historical and archaeological records. 3. Scientific explanations. Let's begin with what the Bible says. The story is recorded in Exodus 14. Before diving into the parting of the Red Sea, it's important to understand why the Israelites were in Egypt in the first place. The story begins with Jacob, the patriarch of Israel, who had 12 sons. One of them, Joseph, played a crucial role in leading his family to Egypt. Joseph was sold into slavery by his jealous brothers and taken to Egypt. Through his ability to interpret dreams, he gained favor with Pharaoh and became a high-ranking official. When a severe famine struck the region, Joseph invited his father Jacob and his entire family, about 70 people, to settle in Egypt. Over the next 4 centuries, the Israelites multiplied into a large population, which the Egyptians began to see as a threat. 400 years later, the situation changed dramatically. A new pharaoh, who did not know Joseph, came to power. He enslaved the Israelites, forcing them into brutal labor to control their growing numbers. Fearing their continued growth, Pharaoh ordered the killing of all newborn Hebrew boys. During this time, a Hebrew woman hid her infant son in a basket and placed it on the Nile River to save him from Pharaoh's decree. The baby was discovered by Pharaoh's daughter and raised in the Egyptian royal court. He was named Moses. As an adult, Moses killed an Egyptian who was beating a Hebrew slave and fled to the wilderness of Midian. The call of Moses. While tending sheep, Moses encountered the burning bush, where God commanded him to return to Egypt and lead his people to freedom. With his brother Aaron as his spokesman, Moses confronted Pharaoh, demanding, "Let my people go." When Pharaoh refused, God sent 10 devastating plagues upon Egypt. 1 water to blood, the Nile River turned red, killing fish and making the water undrinkable. 2 frogs, swarms of frogs covered the land. 3 lice, gnats, insects plagued the people and animals. 4 flies, a massive invasion of flies struck Egypt. 5 livestock disease, Egyptian cattle and horses died. 6 boils, painful sores broke out on the Egyptians. 7 hailstorm, a deadly storm destroyed crops and homes. 8 locusts, they devoured all remaining vegetation. 9 darkness, a supernatural darkness, covered Egypt for 3 days. Death of the firstborn, every Egyptian firstborn died, but the Israelites were spared by marking their doorposts with lamb's blood, an event now commemorated as Passover. The final plague broke Pharaoh's will, and he finally let the Israelites go. With an estimated 600,000 Israelite men, plus women and children, Moses led them out of Egypt. But Pharaoh changed his mind and sent his army, chariots, soldiers, and horsemen, to bring them back. The Israelites found themselves trapped between Pharaoh's forces and the Red Sea, terrified that they would be slaughtered. Moses reassured them. Exodus 14:13, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again." Then, following God's command, Moses raised his staff over the sea, and something extraordinary happened. Exodus 14:21. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters parted, forming walls of water on both sides. The Israelites crossed on dry ground, escaping to safety. When Pharaoh's army pursued them, the waters rushed back, drowning his chariots and soldiers. This miraculous event marked the final deliverance of the Israelites, proving God's power and faithfulness to his people. For thousands of years, people have debated, did this event really happen? Was it a supernatural miracle, a natural phenomenon, or a symbolic story? To find answers, let's examine historical and archaeological evidence. The story of the Exodus is one of the most debated events in biblical history. Despite being a foundational story for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, no direct Egyptian records explicitly mention the Israelites' escape. But why? Why don't we find direct evidence in Egyptian records? Egyptian records rarely documented military failures. Ancient Egypt was a highly centralized kingdom where pharaohs were regarded as living gods. The historical records that survived are mostly inscriptions found in temples, monuments, and tombs. Officially sanctioned accounts meant to glorify the reign of the pharaoh. Defeats and humiliations were not recorded or were rewritten to preserve the pharaoh's divine status. Examples of Egyptian history being rewritten or censored. The Battle of Kadesh, 1274 BC. Pharaoh Ramses II claimed a great victory, but independent Hittite sources suggest it was actually a stalemate or even an Egyptian retreat. Pharaoh Akhenaten's religious reforms, 1350 BC. After his death, his successors erased his name and destroyed his monuments to remove all traces of his monotheistic worship. The Hyksos expulsion, circa 1550 BC. A Semitic people, known as the Hyksos, ruled parts of Egypt before being expelled. Egyptian records frame this as a great Egyptian triumph, but some scholars suggest that elements of this event could have influenced the Exodus narrative. Given these historical patterns, it's not surprising that pharaohs would not document the loss of an enslaved population or a catastrophic military defeat in the Red Sea. But could we find indirect evidence of the Exodus? The Ipuwer Papyrus, an Egyptian account of plagues. What is the Ipuwer Papyrus? The Ipuwer Papyrus, dated between the 13th and 17th century BC, is a document written by an Egyptian scribe named Ipuwer, describing a period of great chaos in Egypt. Parallels to the biblical plagues. Some scholars have pointed out that the disasters mentioned in the Ipuwer Papyrus bear a striking resemblance to the biblical 10 plagues. The Ipuwer Papyrus states, "The river is blood," similar to the first plague when the Nile turned to blood. Exodus 7:20. Plague is throughout the land, blood is everywhere. The land is in lamentation, the slaves have become rich. This could refer to the Israelites leaving Egypt with great wealth. Exodus 12:35-36. Gold and lapis lazuli, silver and turquoise are strung on the necks of maidservants. The Bible states that the Israelites took gold and silver from the Egyptians upon their departure. The fire has gone up on high, and its burning goes forth against the enemies of the land. Some scholars link this to the plague of hail mixed with fire, Exodus 9:23-24. Could this be an Egyptian record of the biblical plagues? Some scholars believe the Ipuwer Papyrus describes a natural disaster or political upheaval, rather than a direct account of the Exodus. Others argue that oral traditions of these events could have influenced the biblical story centuries later. Where did the Red Sea crossing happen? The Hebrew Bible calls the body of water Yam Suph, which translates to Sea of Reeds, not Red Sea. This has led to debate over the exact location of the miraculous crossing. Was it the deep Red Sea or a shallower body of water? Possible locations include 1. The Gulf of Suez, Western Red Sea, a deep sea that could align with the biblical narrative of walls of water. 2. The Gulf of Aqaba, Eastern Red Sea, supported by claims of Chariot Wheel Discoveries, but remains controversial. 3. The Bitter Lakes, shallow waters near Egypt. Some suggest a natural wind-driven event could have temporarily exposed dry land. Key theories about Yam Suph. Some scholars believe the Israelites may have crossed a shallow marshland, where strong winds could have temporarily pushed back the water, a theory supported by modern scientific studies. Others argue that the biblical description of walls of water suggests a deeper body of water, making the Red Sea or the Gulf of Aqaba more likely. Did archaeologists find chariot wheels at the bottom of the Red Sea? One of the most intriguing claims in the Exodus debate comes from Ron Wyatt, a controversial explorer who, in the 1970s, claimed to have found chariot wheels at the bottom of the Gulf of Aqaba. What did he claim to find? Coral-covered formations resembling spoked chariot wheels. Axle structures that resembled those used in Egyptian war chariots from the 18th dynasty, 1550 to 1292 BC. Human and horse bones supposedly discovered near these formations. Why is this controversial? No mainstream archaeologists have verified these discoveries. Skeptics argue that coral naturally forms odd shapes, and without controlled excavation, the chariot wheels could be coincidental. The Egyptian army primarily used wooden chariots, which would not have survived in saltwater conditions. That said, some biblical scholars argue that if an Egyptian army had drowned in the sea, artifacts may have been scattered over time or buried under sediment, making them difficult to find today. Conclusion: what does the evidence tell us? What we do know, Egypt had a long history of erasing embarrassing events, making it unlikely that pharaohs would record a failed pursuit of runaway slaves. The Ipuwer Papyrus provides a possible but debated connection to the biblical plagues. The Red Sea crossing location is still debated, with some scholars believing it was a shallow marsh and others supporting a deep water crossing. Chariot wheel claims remain unproven, though the lack of evidence does not necessarily disprove the event. What we don't know. No direct Egyptian records mention Moses or the Exodus. The exact location of the Red Sea crossing remains uncertain. No confirmed archaeological discoveries have conclusively proven or disproven the Exodus. Final thought: while there is no definitive proof confirming the parting of the Red Sea, several pieces of indirect evidence suggest that an Exodus-like event may have occurred. But could science explain how the waters parted? That's what we'll explore next. If Moses didn't miraculously part the sea, could natural forces explain what happened? The wind Setdown Theory. In 2010, researchers at the National Center for Atmospheric Research ran computer simulations. They found that a strong east wind blowing at 63 miles per hour, 100 kilometers per hour, for 12 hours could push back the water. Similar effects have been observed in Lake Erie and the Nile Delta, where strong winds have temporarily exposed dry land. 2. The Tsunami Hypothesis. Some scientists believe a massive earthquake or volcanic eruption triggered a tsunami. Before a tsunami strikes, the water dramatically recedes, exposing the seafloor. This could explain the dry path. The Thera volcanic eruption around 1600 BC in Santorini caused massive tsunamis in the Mediterranean. A similar event could have caused the sea to part before rushing back and drowning Pharaoh's army. The shallow water crossing theory. If the Israelites crossed a marshy area, a strong wind could have temporarily pushed back the water. However, this theory fails to explain how Pharaoh's army drowned. Do these theories disprove the miracle? Not necessarily. Science shows that such events are possible, but it cannot explain the timing and purpose of the event. After examining the biblical story, history, and science, What can we conclude? For believers, this event is a demonstration of God's power. Even if natural forces were involved, the timing was miraculous. For skeptics, the story could be based on real events, but later embellished in biblical texts. Some believe the Exodus was a symbolic story of liberation rather than a historical event. But one thing is undeniable. The story of the Red Sea crossing has shaped faith, culture, and history for over 3,000 years. Whether literal or symbolic, it remains a powerful message of hope and deliverance. Was the parting of the Red Sea a miracle, a natural event, or an ancient legend? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into biblical history. Stay tuned for our next episode on Biblical Journey.